Hi, folks. I want to tell you about a dream that I had. A real dream that was in my sleep. This happened about a year and a half ago. And in the dream, I was in an art class, and one of the students presented an animated film that he had made. And he explained that the content in the video was hard, but that he thinks it might be exactly what we needed to hear. And so I'll just say that the content of this dream is a little hard, but I think it might be exactly what we need to hear. And I've been sitting on it for a long time, obviously, but it seems like a good moment to share this dream. The first scene of the dream starts in a newsroom, and there's the reporter telling about the news of the day. He tells a story about a hurricane smashing into the East Coast. He tells a story about fires burning in multiple countries in the Amazon, California, Australia. He tells a story about how all the soda companies have banded together to make sure that all of their cans are recycled. And they show some footage of a guy in this recycling plant with a melted metal pouring, sparks flying everywhere. The guy's sweating, and in the recycling plant. Tells a story about how there's another mass shooting, and how Congress is just unable to come up with any response to it. And no new legislation. Everyone disagrees about what to do and blames each other. Tells a story about the new iPhone came out, and it has the best camera ever and all sorts of new features, and people are lining up to get their new iPhone. It's really cool. He tells a story about how there's a new report coming out about how Facebook and social media is leading to division, and no one can talk to each other. People aren't even being informed with the same information. Fake news or not, at least no one's even getting the same information. So they're not even giving opportunities to talk to each other. There's good data on that. He tells a story about police killing of another black person, and how the protests start, and the people, as they're fighting and raising a ruckus for racial justice, they're confronted with white supremacy patriotic groups, and there's violence. More some people are killed even in that clash between protesters. He tells a news story about the president choosing to pull out of another treaty that has been going on for decades, about health or mail or something like that. Talks about how the military just signed a contract for airline company to start building a new fighter plane. It's going to be faster and more stealthy and fly higher and be able to drop more bombs in further distances than ever before. And then he says, I've been telling you this news for years. And it's kind of the same news over and over again. And these are serious things that are happening, and I don't know how to impress. There's no gravity in my voice that can help me communicate how intense it is for us to be having all these things going on. I work for a company that's just actually making a profit over selling you this information. And I'm making money selling you this information. And it doesn't seem to really ever change anything. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get your attention enough to let you see how important all of these things I'm telling you are. There's real lives involved here. And so I'm stopping. And he pulls out a gun and he shoots himself in the head on the live news. In the second scene, starts zoomed in on a young boy's face. He's scared. His sweat kind of like beating up on his face, and he's looking down. Just like real terror and pressure. You can tell he's under a lot of pressure. And the camera zooms out, and you can see that he's standing on the edge of a building. And he's looking down. And then as it zooms out more, you see there's a group of other young people there, and he's saying, jump, jump. Come on, man, stop being afraid. Just jump, man, you can do it. And he's like, I'm afraid. I'm really afraid. And they just keep on encouraging him. And he steps forward off the edge. And just before he starts to fall, fire shoots out of the bottom of his shoes. They're rocket boots. And he goes flying up into the sky. And all of his friends cheer, and they all use their rocket boots, and they all just fly up into the sky with him. And they go spiraling way up into the sky above the city with their rocket boots, and they're all cheering, and they're all like, man, that was amazing. And the guy's saying, I was so afraid, you guys. I was afraid I was going to fall. And they're like, I know, but look at you did it, and we're so proud of you. And they're all just like giving each other high fives and flying up above the city just free. And you know, the boy was saying, he's like, you know, I was thinking that, like, you know, if I like jumped off of this, I would have died, you guys. And one of the other kids says, you know, my grandma says that people used to do that. Well, yeah, we're in the year 2070 now, and people used to do that. I think they called it suicide. And the kids are like, no way that people used to do that on purpose. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. And they're like, come on, let's go to my grandma's house and she'll tell us. And they're like, your grandma's awesome. We love your grandma. I'm like, yeah, let's go check her out. So they go flying off. In the third scene, the kids land in the front yard of the grandma's house, and she's like, oh my god, you flew, it's so exciting. And they're like, she's really proud because she knew that this is going to be the guy's first time flying. And they're all like, yeah, it was really exciting, and like he was so scared, you know, just kids and excitement. And they're like, grandma, can we talk to you? She's like, yeah, of course. And she's like, you know, I just made some fresh cookies. And she invites them into their living room, and they kind of like sit around on the floor and chairs and such, eating cookies. And they're like, grandma, remember how you were telling me that people used to kill themselves? I think you called it suicide. Is that real? Did that really happen? She's like, yeah. In fact, in the year 2020, suicide was the number one cause of death, just except for accidents. You know, the cause of death that we had control over, it was the number one cause of death for people between the ages of 10 and 35. And the kids go, oh, what? She's like, and it wasn't just suicide. Suicide's a word that suffix means to kill. Suicide's to kill yourself. The second leading cause of death was homicide. I'm like, what's homicide? They ask. And then she says, it's when people kill each other. And people are like, wait, why would they do that? She's like, that wasn't the only kind. We also had insecticide and herbicides. We had genocide. Genocide? People would try to kill entire cultures. And the kids were like, no, I can't believe that used to happen. How did that happen? She was like, you know, it was a whole different world back then. I think we were in this time where there was just bad news happening over and over and over again. And we had gotten kind of complacent about it. We just started accepting that was just what was going to happen. And we looked to our leaders, and we kind of like always kept hoping that there would be someone who would be in charge, who would like fix the problem, and like maybe the next guy will do it, or maybe the next guy. But actually we were like caught in a system where we were just like picking the person who we thought was maybe going to be the least bad. And we've been doing that for decades. And all of the things, the suicides and the homicides and the killings of the forests and such, we just got used to it. And it was just became routine. And they're like, I can't believe that. How could that all have been routine? Just, I remember it, and it's hard to believe now. But yeah. And they're like, what happened? It's kind of a hard thing. But actually, this news reporter, one day, while telling the news about all the things that were happening, he killed himself on the television, and we all watched. And there were videos, and it was really horrible. But something happened there, and people just snapped out of it. They just started realizing that, like, holy cow, we have to make this better, and we're the ones who are going to make it better. We can't look to the leaders anymore. And so the people started taking charge of making a better world. And they rallied around the cause, we're going to make the world as good as possible for as many people as possible. And all sorts of things started happening. The first was that they just stopped tolerating all these inadequate, dysfunctional ways of being. They demanded that no decisions would be made by leaders without there being participation of all the people who would be impacting it. So all sorts of dialogue processes started happening, and people started getting engaged in their own communities, their own cities, and people just stopped letting leaders, make bad decisions for them. People started insisting on there being livable economics, just like there could no longer be the economic disparity that there was, which was like a real problem back then. People also just insisted on our unity and our collaboration. They really recognized that everyone here is all in this together, and we all have a role to play. If we're going to make the world its best possible world for everyone, we need to actually all work together on it. And so all those kinds of divisions that used to be happening, they stopped. People just started learning how to learn better communication skills. They learned how to communicate, and they didn't see conflict or disagreement as a problem. They started just figuring it out as like, hey, these are different perspectives. This will actually help us come up with better ideas. People committed, there was these things called the Sustainable Development Goals that people from all over the world had come together, and there were 17 of them, and everyone just started insisting that these have to happen, and they started working on it. They also started insisting that that there couldn't be things that we just threw away anymore. We used to throw away a lot of trash, just a lot of things. And so the companies and the people all took responsibility for making sure that like everything that was made had a way of being reused or being able to be recycled, or we could compost it. We just started changing the way we do it, and actually it wasn't that hard to do. And there's also like people started understanding that we needed to understand, because we were like so connected. We had this modern world, we had this internet, and it was just all these things, and we realized that we needed to continue to be connected and modern, but that we also needed to remember all of our original cultures and traditions. And so just like you see today, where we all remember where we came from and we all celebrate our ancestors, people started paying attention to where their ancestors were from and started learning the lessons that their ancestors had learned. And we integrated these ancient traditions with these modern ways, and it really just became a wonderful way for making that transformation. It also became, people just insisted that every person, every job had to be treated with dignity, and people just started being really grateful to everyone for whatever work they were doing. And they made sure that they listened to each other so that everyone could be making sure that they were enjoying and contributing in exactly the way that they wanted. And the job that people didn't want to do, people volunteered to do that kind of work. We rotated. It was really cool. It's just like, we still do it today. And it took a while. It took almost a decade, or more than a decade, before things really started to change. But as soon as we all committed to building the world as good for all of us, as good as possible for all of us, things immediately started changing. And from there, we were able to start to figure out new kinds of energy, and we were able to come up with like all sorts of creative solutions. And we also realized that we actually had so many of the solutions already. And the world that you live in now is kind of what started being born out of that. It took us about 15 years before we figured out the technology, but for us to make those rocket boots that you guys are using today. And eventually we all just were so proud to be in a world where the sovereignty and freedom of each individual was guaranteed, and we were taking care of everyone. And that is how we got to where we are today. I'm so glad that you kids came to ask. Those were hard times, but it was really amazing how well we rallied together once we realized that we wouldn't tolerate it anymore. Thank you for listening.